All right, so the dense part of this week's lecture is going to be talking about problematic geometry and how to fix it. There's nothing you will need to like hand in from this. This is just like a click through, learn things, use them, later on kind of a situation. Though the survey questions will be on this section, right? So before I get into the actual cleanup tool, I want to go over the specific kinds of geometry because the cleanup tool looks like this. It's under mesh, cleanup, and you have to go to settings to turn anything on. And it has things like concave faces, non-planar faces, lamina faces. We need to know what these are. so um, we're going to hit close. And my computer's beeping at me. Stand by. All right. So different kinds of problematic geometry. One of you has seen every one of these has been seen by at least someone in class this year. But it's kind of still good to put a name to a face, because there are some technical terms that we want to go over. So one thing that I've talked about a bit, but we've only just been getting into now that we get better at modeling, is something called non-planar faces. This plane has a whole lot of different wrong things in it, and one of them is this face right here. This is what's called a non-planar face. You'll notice it's non-planar in like two different directions. It's like bending down this way, but also like it's got this concave part in the middle, right? Technically, that should look like a gully, except it doesn't because it can't. it, there's no way to light a single face differently across the face, not in this manner anyways. All right, so that's what's known as a non-planar face. Other problematic features would be this right here. This is called a concave face, and what it's referring to is this indent right here. There's no reason for an edge loop to do that. Really, there should be an edge right here. And then you can have that. You can have a jaggedy edge all you want. People were making saw blades for the midterm, but you need to have edge loops coming in here. Other issues are faces with more than 4 sides, which there's more of them in here than you would think, although I know you all can see at least 2. Faces should not have more than 4 sides usually, at least for the type of modeling that we are learning, which there's really no type of modeling where like 7 sides to a face is okay. So these are different ways in which you can fix. They're all categorized together because you can fix these by what's called tessellation, meaning just adding geometry. So for the most part, we wouldn't be changing where anything is. You add an edge here and an edge here, and suddenly you've got quads and no concave faces. If you were to split this up properly, because right now there's 5 sides, there's a way to split this so that there's only 4 sides maybe going across this whole thing, or whatever the solution is. And in terms of this face, if you really need this to be punching down here, there's a way to cut into this so that you don't have this weird scraggly face going in. So Maya considers all of these tessellation problems. And tessellation is basically a technical term for how you build the surface. So if you look at all of these here, you can see all these different patterns, these different shapes put together to create a larger shape. That, but in 3 dimensions, right? That's what we're dealing with when we're dealing with all of these polygons here. So that's tessellation is just a technical term for how did we cut this up. Other types of crazy wrong geometry. So we've got this, which is non-manifold. How do I explain the word manifold? Basically, we need to unwrap these into UVs, right? We've talked about UVs before as being a 2-dimensional map of this 3-dimensional image, and you need to be able to make one that's technically continuous. Yes, we can split them apart, but you are supposed to be able to unfold it, like skinning an animal, like undoing a pillowcase or something. It should be able to come off of there. You cut it on one place and it lays out flat. How do we lay this out flat? The answer is you don't, right? Because we have 3 different faces sharing one edge. That should not be happening. So that's a form of non-manifold geometry. Another type of thing that can happen, and it happens a lot. I have 2 different versions of similar problem with a similar solution. On this one, I had selected this edge, extruded it, didn't move it, and then extruded it again, which means we get this. We have seen, oh, I think I have that backwards. There we go. So all of these are 2 vertexes. These are 0 area faces, right? So these are faces, there is a face in there. You can see one here and one here. But they are technically taking up 0 area right now. Also a part of this would be 0 length edges. I think that's what it's called. Basically an edge with nothing to it. So there's no there's no length to it. There's nothing there. Yeah, 0 length. So I call them hidden faces, but they are 0 area faces. On this one, oh, I broke it apart a little bit earlier. So you can already see where this is going, but what technically happened here is that I extruded these faces out without actually moving them. So we have something that at first might look similar to the problem over there, except it is quite different because it's not just these vertexes we have to merge, it's these. Another word for this, if we want to get technical, would be lamina faces. Lamina faces share all their edges. So, or you could look at it as there's just 2 sets of 0 area faces. Either way, lots of problems. All right, so the question then is, well, how do we fix this stuff? Let me undo because we don't want to be able to see what's going on. There we go. So how do we fix these things? Well, we have gone over things in the past to manually find them. And that is on purpose. Eventually, we're going to get to a tool where you can do things a little bit more automatically, but that tool can break things really easily, and we don't know what settings to use unless we know what things are called. That's why I've been having you manually look at things. Also, you shouldn't have a model with tons and tons of broken stuff on it. So again, we want to be paying attention to things. I wonder if I can undo that because I definitely don't want that to be out. Aha, there we go. Perfect. So how do we fix things? Well, I've been saying before that you can put things into vertex face mode. That can show you a hidden face. This one, I can go to vertex face mode. It can show me 2 sets of hidden faces, right? So this is one way we can use to find things. And of course, when it comes to things that are exactly on top of each other like that, go into vertex mode, select the whole thing, edit mesh, merge. And if we go to the settings, we can kind of turn that up and down, merge things together. The polygon cleanup tool we're going to use has something similar. They just use different words, right? So that would be manually fixing that, just one problem. Same thing, you can do the same thing here. For this one, if we are having problems, sometimes we have to go into vertex mode to find these extra vertexes because edges got deleted without delete edge vertex. So we have to remember that if you are deleting edges, you have to go to edit mesh, delete edge vertex, so it gets rid of that vertex altogether. Otherwise you get this. See how these edges are split. You can, of course, if you accidentally do that once or twice, you can go into just vertex mode and just hit delete, and it will delete them like that. All right, but if you should not have edges where there's 2 in a row that don't move. There shouldn't be, like 3 vertexes in a row along what looks like one edge. Like you should never have a situation where you don't know why this edge is split in half. Something like this, multi-cut tool. You could just go in here, click, etc. And something like this, fix how it's shaped. I've worded this as you're asking a lot of this one face, right? You're asking a lot of this one face to do that. And so if that needed to stay there, let's say that like absolutely needed to stay there. Well, there's ways you can cut into this. It's not ideal, but at least just to get started, right? You can cut down on a couple of different ways. And so especially cutting it in half like this, that's key. I'm being very sloppy so I can be quick. But something like this might work out a little bit better. I don't know if the machine's going to peg this as non-manifold geometry. We can find out in a second. All right, so that's great for little individual changes. But what if maybe something's gotten out of hand, there's like a lot, or you can't see it, right? Not everything you model is going to be this like open plane where you can see all your geometry easily. Sometimes things are hidden. So under mesh, we have this cleanup tool. And I come in here and we can see a lot of technical language. We're going to get to operation in a second. Scope refers to, do we want to do the whole scene or just the thing we have selected? I usually do the thing that's selected. Keep construction history. Well, yeah, usually we want to keep that unless we're purposely deleting it, which we'll talk about next week when it comes to scene cleanup. But one of the things we can do is not just fix things right away. We can use this tool to find stuff. Under operation, it says clean up matching polygons, meaning if it finds anything that you click here, it'll just fix it. Or you can select matching polygons, and that, well, you can tell it to select four-sided faces. If we tell it just to select four-sided faces and hit apply, there it is. This is what happens. It shows us all the faces that are the correct number of sides. Now, we knew this one was wrong, we knew this one was wrong. It tells us these two are wrong, right? So it can help you find 3- and 5-sided and multi-sided polygons, called n-sided polygons if you want to get technical, pretty easily. Or we can tell it, if you select that, you really can't check anything else because this is finding good stuff and this is finding bad stuff. So we can say find faces with more than 4 sides, and it will, there we go. It'll find you that, or concave faces, right? So you can use this to find, there's no faces with holes in here, to find a specific problem, or you can use it to find all the problems and assume that you'll know what you're looking at when you see it, basically. So now this one, it seems like it would be obvious, but whoops, things are still selected. Stand by. There we go. This was rotating. So I'm gonna move this down. I'm gonna surfaces, JK mesh display, reverse. I'm gonna make this as if we're on the outside of something and so we can't see this. And I'm gonna select it and I'm gonna have it tell me about non-manifold geometry. And you'll see it points it out by selecting the vertexes. So imagine you're on the outside of an object and you click it and you say, show me non-manifold geometry, and you hit apply and you see this. You know that on the other side there's something else going on. All right, and then last but not least, if I select these two, let's see, select matches, okay. I can tell it to not only show this, but actually I know it's not non-manifold, that's a problem. I can have it show me edges and faces with 0 area. And it shows me these faces with 0 area. Basically, there's a whole bunch of stuff in there. It's not showing it on this one, curiously enough. It shows it on one. Cool. I ran some tests on this beforehand, and getting it to show that particular problem of just the one set of hidden faces, I haven't found a good way to do that. Even if you like fake smooth it, it kind of hides itself. It doesn't find it very easily. Even if I up these amounts, yeah, it doesn't really want to acknowledge that that's in there, which is unfortunate. Maybe if I call it this. Nope. Yeah, it does. It might be a display thing because it's kind of hard to display the face you can't see. Right? But there are other ways to find that in there. So this is another reason why I don't want you to think this is like a panacea. This is not like the be all end all solves all the problems kind of thing. I'm gonna go to edit reset settings, because it doesn't. Like it doesn't solve every problem, and it can break things in its attempt to solve the problems. So let's go through how it would solve the problem. So now I'm turning on the cleanup mandatory or clean up matching polygons as opposed to just finding them. All right, and in the case of fixed by tessellation, I have found that it wants to do triangles and basically it wants to always set up everything with triangles. So it's great for finding problematic areas, but you have got to know how to fix things. For example, if I say concave faces and hit apply, it does this. I think we all know that is not where anything needs to be going. It put in the 2 edges that I do need, this one and this one, but it also put in 3 that I don't. And yeah, I can go in and delete them, but that's a lot of work for, like, using the multi-cut tool might have been more effective. If I set this up to look for faces with, faces with more than 4 sides, it does the same thing. Now, depending on what I needed, I either only need this edge coming up to here, or maybe I don't want that at all. Maybe I want these vertexes to go away. So by asking it not to clean up stuff, but to find stuff with more than 4 sides. So I see, oh, these are more than 4 sides. Why is that? Vertex mode. And then I have to decide, do I want to delete these things? And then go from here and then ask it again, okay, how would you fix that? Oh wait, I forgot to tell it to clean up. Oh dear. That's terrible. Let's see if it gives a different answer when I have the whole thing selected. Nope, it doesn't. Again, it wants to go by triangles. Not ideal. So if we needed to branch this off somehow, we would need to figure out what we wanted to do. Now, this is not the best example because, like, why would I end this edge loop here and not go there? Even if I had some extruded detail over here, we would just continue it on. But that is something to consider when we're asking this to fix things. The last one is non-planar faces. It wants to do this, which technically it has now made 2 perfectly planar faces, but that's not it's not in the direction that we need. So if I grab the multi-cut tool and I go in here and I put this back and I do what I was doing before, I think it'd be better if I'm holding down shift to get it like have Z. Oh wow, hang on. I could do it to 60 or 70% if I want to instead of click and hold, and it'll tell me what percent I'm at, which means I could do it at sort of different intervals. 50. So it doesn't just constrain it to halfway, which is great. So I kind of fix it myself, I think maybe, and then what I'll do is I'll ask it again. Okay, is there any non-planar polys? Nope. So running it before told me when there was non-planar polys. It told me this one polygon was non-planar. But it was not happy. Like its solution was terrible. Now, when it comes to unwrapping this in UVs, well, now we've got what is technically a star, meaning there's 5 edges that go into one vertex. That is not ideal. It is sometimes, occasionally unavoidable. I say occasionally. There's times in faces where you might have one like at the corner of an eye or tucked behind the ear. You know, there's places it happens. It also depends on if you're deforming things or not. But it might work out better than triangles. And it also depends on what your workflow is, because if you're in games, you're probably working a lot with triangles. But we're not really aiming towards that right now with our models. All right, so when we fix that, let's see what it wants to do with non-manifold geometry with actually fixing it. And it shows us where it is. I'm not sure it did anything. It did nothing. In part because I don't know that we could do. So I'm telling it to remove non-manifold geometry. Keep construction history. Yep, clean up. Nothing. And I think it's because in this case it is the whole thing. But it can show me where it is. If I ask it to show me where it is, it can show me where it. JK? Oh dear. Now suddenly it's not working. That figures. Oh, unless it. There it is. It broke it apart. It just didn't tell me it broke it apart. This is why I should test everything before I run the video. So it broke it into sections, which great, except of course you would need to know it did that. Otherwise you would have random stuff hanging about in your file. So what I did was I undid it to the point where I cleaned it up. So I hit apply and it shows me that these are here. And that's great on this one piece. So on this one piece, I know that's there. And so I can say separate. It separates it into two separate pieces as they should be, fine. And then I could delete this really easily if I want. But imagine if you have like a whole model. Therein lies your problem. All right, so next up we have our hidden faces. All right, we're going to select both of them at the same time because they're both basically similar problems. I caused them very differently. One was extruding edges and not moving it. The other was extruding a face out but not actually moving it. And I'm going to tell it, let's see, clean up, non-manifold. Oh, I technically don't need that. Edges with 0 length, faces with 0 area. And then I'm going to say clean up. And I forgot to hit apply so that the window stayed open. But if I go into vertex face mode, you can see that they've both been cleaned up of everything. So this one works nicely. And it's very similar though to the merge vertexes. The edit mesh merge, right? When we were merging vertexes all the time. And it has that same slider where it starts at a very low number, but you can ramp that up, which means if you have something with really tight edge loops, I'm thinking that mill wheel that everyone did, y'all had like lots of little beveled edges and detail, which is great, except like how do you know, if they're 0.02 units away from each other, you will accidentally merge details together. So just like with the merge tool, you do have to be careful for this one. Two things I did not cover right now. So faces with 0 map area, that has to do with UVs. So if you have UVs laid out already and they're not mapped, like there's no, like for whatever reason, what faces just got added aren't showing up on the map as having any area. It's similar to having faces with 0 geometry area, but it's basically if you added them afterwards, kind of. I would usually do a cleanup before I UV map everything, so I don't really know how that would get in there, but it's there for a reason. So, and then invalid components would remove weird stuff that shouldn't be there at all. So I want to see, are those still in there? They are not. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to manually, not enough space for any of the tools. I'm going to, wait, that's right, I can go, duh. I'm going to manually add this back in and break it again. So we're going to do this. And then we're going to go into object mode and we're going to see if it will get rid of that vertex. Nope. So its definition of invalid components, this might be more for like if you set it to select to everything, and then there's like a single edge off by itself or a single vertex off by itself. That can happen. It can happen where if you're deleting stuff the wrong way, I'm not sure, can I do this? No, because I can't. I'm not even sure how I could break it, because if I get rid of a face, it does that. But I've seen it happen where you have like a random isolated edges just chilling on their own, and to get rid of them, let's see if I can delete it this way. Yeah, you can't delete an edge that's on the edge. But I promise it's possible to have things be isolated like that. And when that happens, they kind of float around in space somewhere. They end up with weird names over in your outliner, and they're hard to find. And so you can, oh, nope, I don't want UVs. You can tell this to apply to all polygon objects and just delete invalid components, which would get rid of like the weird stuff that's like sitting around that maybe got left behind.